much. Thank you for the warm welcome. And indeed, this year there has been a little bit of travel, but for the past few years, there wasn't, because the world it is still a crazy place. But indeed, it was crazy, of course, because of border closures and so on. But I feel super lucky to have traveled further than any other time during the pandemic, going to like 70 or more countries, being able to travel wide and far. And thank goodness that we have this technology. And I think it does reflect how we can do business, and this shift of how we used to do things versus how we can do it now is really at the heart of what I'm going to share with you today. And indeed, Michaela and I, we worked together several years ago, before Zoom, that's for sure, on export strategies, including the Romanian export strategy. So hello to you there, those of you that are coming from Romania. I have very fond memories of being there. And of course, the strategy process was at its highest level. Where are we? Where do we want to be? And how do we get there? And I would say that this strategic process at its highest level has not changed, but how we get there, what we can do, our risks, our opportunities, our inward orientation versus our outwards focus has absolutely shifted. And so I'm going to do a little bit of a comparison, talking about the world that was, and some people still approach the world as it was, but so much is changing in the world. And I want any business that is really serious about scaling globally, any business that is wanting to be successful in a market or many markets, whatever success looks like to you, we really need to understand what's the world we're living in. And so that's really at the heart of what I'm sharing. So today is a masterclass, and it's to make sense of a fast-changing world. And that is absolutely key to global business strategy. How do we survive in business in general in this very integrated world? If you are online, and you all are, you can be found. If you're doing something amazingly well, you can be found and copied. So it's wonderful to have a little bit of space to be world leading. Indeed, we've already heard the best in the world, and I love that. But how do we make you stay the best in the world? Because people can find you and copy you. So we're living in this very fast-paced world, and so we need to have an expanded worldview and work fast and effectively. So this is a masterclass. Now I love a group of this size, I must say, because we can be very interactive. So I encourage you, please use the chat box, and I'll get my Stoica colleagues there to please man the chat box and just let me know if anything major is popping up. But also unmute yourself at any time if you would like to ask a question, make comments. Absolutely, please do. Now, we're a small group, and what I think is a key outcome from this type of masterclass is who we meet and who we know. So those of you with screens on, thank you very much. And those of you that don't, we would welcome seeing you if your bandwidth allows and you're feeling comfortable to do so. Please share who you are and what you're about, what your struggles are. Someone else might face those struggles, what your opportunities are. Someone else might have seized those opportunities. And what I find is in this community of business leaders, of entrepreneurs, of change makers in the world, using technology to do interesting things, that we're a very supportive community. So I would love if you got to know a couple of people here, and maybe they've become a part of your inner circle moving forward. So let's absolutely be interactive. And yeah, the world is a more interesting place when we get out and explore with others. So yeah, please do engage as much as possible. I'd love to get to know you. And so I mentioned earlier this strategic process of, where are we? And where do we want to be, and how do we get there? It really does remain at its highest level. And how we make sense of the world is somewhat similar. We tend to make sense based on our typical influences, what we see, what we hear. There's a lot that's going on behind the scenes that is somewhat deceptive. But that's, of course, deception is at the heart of disruption. you know, Uber and Airbnb being classical examples. They come out of nowhere and they disrupt traditional legacy industries. So this expanded worldview isn't just looking at new markets, but it's who is developing products, services, technologies, innovative business models that is indeed disruptive. And that's the work that I do, including here in the Philippines. I manage corporate innovation sprints and venture building, in addition to doing global strategy work at a more general level. So this is what I want you to think about. Where are you? Where do you want to be? And is it clear how to get there? So what I'd love to do now actually is ask a question in the chat box. What is international growth, or it could even be a little bit bolder than that? What's global domination for you? What does success on the world stage look like for you? If you'd like to pop an answer into the chat box, that'd be great. You might want to expand into one market. You might want global domination. You might be anywhere in between. What is it for you? What does success look like for you and your business in the world? Wonderful. Thanks for kicking us off, Elena. Would you like to talk to it? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, so I can break the ice a little bit. I realize we're in a market that's probably overcrowded. Everyone knows what a B2B marketing agency is and that, so it's not necessarily something that you need to explain, but I think there are so many competitors out there and there's so much similarity that it's difficult to stand out, and everyone of course claims to be good and professional and know of course what they're doing. So I think being recognized as the go-to agency, like when you have issues growing your business online, finding the right online strategy to grow through marketing, you're like, where should I go? Who should I ask for help? Oh, there's Stoicas. That's and I mentioned Europe for now. I think that's the midterm goal. But yeah, just being recognized as the go-to agency in our space and being recognized as professionals and good consultants in European space. That's what I understand by global domination, or that's the vision.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Alexandra, thank you for your comments. Would you like to share as well? Would you like to speak to what you've written in the chat box? Hi there.
I'm not sure my headset is working.
We can hear you.
Handling some modern workplace issues at home, so a little bit harder to talk. So I'm currently working with several startups that are targeting global markets in different ways. One is much more tech-oriented than the other, and one is bridging the traditional business way of doing trainings and consultancy with actually we are thinking about a more digital approach as we are trying to adapt to everything that's changing and has already changed. So this is the discussion today is very spot on with what I'm doing currently.
Wonderful. Well, we're delighted to have you with us, Alexandra. Okay, I am going to move on. I feel like time is already flying for us. So really wonderful. And I love these two examples of what the world is for us, and our aspiration can be very personal and very different. But what is fairly consistent is this real shift in how we do business in the world. So how do we take who we are, what we know, who we know, what we do well, and take it out into the world? And so traditionally it's been a case that companies want to internationalize, or they want to export, they want to have an international footprint. They do that because of course they want to diversify They want to diversify revenue flows. They want to capture greater market share. They want to expose a company to greater competition, to be stronger, less reliant on just one market, of course, being close to investors, R&D, partners, and so on. And those motivations indeed can remain. But what happened in the past, so when Michaela and I were working together, it was really expensive to expand internationally. It was difficult. It required a large team, fixed resources, and so on. And so in the past, we really had to make, sense of a world. What's our role in the world? And it was really costly and complex. And we'd typically engage experts. We'd pay them a lot of money to help us. It was often tied to the physical world. We'd set up an office. We'd have local representatives in market. It was like this all-in commitment. And so the world has changed somewhat. And so we used to make a decision to expand. But as I've said before, I believe if you're online and you are connected, if you're on LinkedIn, even if you have a website, you are global. You just might not be playing to a global market, but you certainly can be found by competitors. You might be found by people who want to partner with you. They might like something about you. And you can be found, of course, by a market. But how we lean into that really depends on where we're at and where we want to go. And so what I'm going to share with you is the framework that I use is based on the exponential organization framework developed by Salim Ismail. He studied 100 of the world's fastest growing companies about 7 years ago, and he developed this EXO framework. And so what a couple of dozen of us do around the world is we use this framework to help companies make sense of the world and execute business strategies from there. So it's less, who are we? What do we do really well? Let's just go do that. It's what's happening in the world, where are the opportunities, the risks, and how do we then take what we do out there in a very agile, low risk, low investment, high impact, high experimentation, high engagement type way. And we don't have time to go through the full framework today, but if you're interested, we can share some details on where you can get some more information. So there are three major themes that are key to making sense of the world. And, where is the world today and where is it going? And so to make sense of the world is I think it's a form of insurance. It's the way you mitigate risk and maximize reward in this fast changing environment. There is so much at the geopolitical level. There's so much happening with technology, with innovative business models. There is so much happening outside of you. It's not right, I think, like it's highly risky to take what you do out in the world, focusing on what you do. Start outside, looking outside, what's happening in the world, and get really clear on where your blind spots are, where your gaps are, and what you can do to fill them. So the first major theme that I'd like to share with you briefly, I'm just going to share the three with you briefly. So of course, we're in this connected world. We're here in Zoom, and we're in this connected world, and the world is speeding up. Okay, so I know everyone's talking about ChatGPT at the moment, but I'm going to talk about it in a slightly different way. Okay, so it took 5 days for ChatGPT to reach 1 million users and 2 months to reach 100 million users. It took Instagram almost 1,000 days to do this, to reach 1 million users. It took Twitter 2,000 days. And it took Netflix 3,500 days. Okay, so since November 2022, ChatGPT by OpenAI, of course, their traffic has surged, and they're of course just reached ChatGPT 4 with, of course, increased capability in advanced reasoning, complex instructions, more creativity, and so on. So there are tens of ChatGPT applications coming out every week. So of course, companies that are building on the technology to develop something of their own offering. So the world of acceleration is here to stay. People think that the ChatGPT, of course, has come out of nowhere. Of course it hasn't. It's been developed for a long time. If we were to look at the Gartner hype cycle from 2021, in the deceptive stage, we would see chatbots, but now it's entered the mainstream stage where we see very high take up. And so it's interesting to think about how you can reach 100 million users in 2 months. What would that mean for your business? And so it's been done. It's been done. What does it mean for your business? What does it mean for your competitors? So just a thought experiment. The second major trend is that data is also only set to explode globally. So if you think about the Internet of Things, there were 31 billion sensors in the world in 2021, and these sensors haven't been fully connected. The infrastructure is being built. And it's forecast that there will be 125 billion sensors in 2030. So a carpet of sensors is going to blanket the world. And so with this, we have a world where we can know everyone. Everyone can know anything, anytime, anywhere. And with internet coverage, of course, set to expand via Starlink satellites, the world will continue to be connected. Data will be available and used to grow businesses. So, of course, online digital tech businesses will increasingly leverage this data and provide future-looking, personalized offerings. So if you have a standard offering, will your competitors start to offer very personalized, tailored offerings? What's the data that would be needed to do that? And is the data currently available, or is it coming online? So if we start to think about diversification, going into new markets was the key way we used to diversify. What we make, one of these widgets, we wanted to send to lots of different places because it was, didn't require much change on our part. But now we cannot just have one offering and roll it out consistently unless it's potentially a very high-end exclusive experience. That aside, those are going off in price, if anything, but everything else becomes more competitive and comes down in price. So how do we use the data that is there? It's there. Someone's going to use it. Is it going to be us? Is it going to be our competitor? How's it going to be? How's it going to play out? So with, of course, data, we can understand the world, and we can understand problems that our market, our current and our potential market face. And, that might be in 3 markets or 30 markets, 30 countries around the world. We can get all of that data, and increasingly so in the coming years. So in the past, it was suggested that we focus on a small number of markets at a time. It's very important to have this disciplined approach, and that was a way of lowering risk because there was so much cost and time involved. However, this connectivity means that we can start with a few markets, we can experiment, we can test, and then of course we can scale to it might be the EU first indeed, and then to other markets. So I guess a key area to consider is the need. Where is the need in the world? If we understand the problems that our market face in our backyard, in our own country, within our region, it's very good to start to think about at the global level, where do these needs extend to? And what might you need to do to start building a network? Understanding people, having connections, are there regulatory requirements? Are there local competitors or local homegrown startups in other parts of the world? And are there opportunities to partner as part of a scale program and so on? So it's looking at where we are, but really being ambitious with where could we be? And looking at these different ways of expanding based on data, experimentation, potentially partnering and so on. So the third major theme is about cooperation, and I've mentioned partners and so on. So we know that competition, we used to compete a lot in the world. We'd partner sometimes, but really we'd compete for a larger slice of the pie. And so if anyone else wanted part of that pie, they were our competitors. But now what we're seeing is companies expanding the pie by offering new services. And this example does illustrate it. So the world's fastest growing companies can scale because they remove processes. They remove, of course, cost and complexity, and they focus on cooperation and co-creation rather than this cooperation. So Amazon is a company we all know. It's quite handy to use these case studies that we're all familiar with, especially if we're coming from different parts of the world. And so what does Amazon focus on? Do they sell things, or are they a platform? And I know I'm talking to a very digital literate audience here, of course, they are a platform, and traditional companies sell products. But for companies like Amazon, competition is less important than cooperation and co-creation. Okay, so for example, a traditional company, a traditional bookstore, Amazon started selling books, supplier selection of, publishers, what books are we going to take? But also there might be a gift shop type section, supplier selection was quite the process that would take time and money with running this business, a long and detailed process. But of course, Amazon were clever because they got their customers and their suppliers to do a lot of their work. And so Amazon allow any supplier to join and customers rate them. And that means there's a zero marginal cost of adding the next customer or supplier, and user reviews are also automated at zero cost. So how do we also help grow our business by removing the friction, the cost and complexity that used to involve getting more suppliers, or even the cost of customer acquisition? How, there are many case studies out in the world of how that, of course, is possible. So customers for organizations like Amazon, control of relationships is more important than control of resources. And they also, of course, leverage their strengths to diversify their revenue and profit. So Amazon Web Services was built to support Amazon.com, the retail platform. And so what they did is they tested Amazon Web Services to see if anyone would value this. Was it of any value? Was it of use? Was it solving a problem? And they discovered that they indeed could roll it out. And I mean, it makes an absolute staggering amount of money, millions every day. And so this is, of course, an important way that they diversified. What do they do well? What was happening behind the scenes, of course, within their business to help grow what was their dominant business at the time, the dominant platform? And how do you leverage what you do well to open up revenue and profit streams? And of course, Amazon Web Services enables Amazon.com, and there are, of course, platforms in other parts of the world, .au, .fr, and so on. How does Amazon Web Services make them so much money, and then indeed it does, that they can undercut Amazon retail, their competitors, and so they can secure market domination in that way. And so it's really important also to reflecting on that, to think about who are you competing against, and if their business model is innovative, if they're able to leverage what they do well to open up, if they're leveraging data, for example, how are they able to potentially open up new revenue and profit streams? That means that you're not competing with a comparative company. And we're seeing more and more of that. So it's definitely something to be mindful of. So these trends are all around us, and they're happening at an increasing rate. This is the world we live in, and it's not, of course, going away. And so when you think of where you are and where you want to be, what comes to mind? What are potential gaps that you see? What comes to mind? Do you think, oh my gosh, this is really complex, this is so, how do I do this? This is really challenging. Or you're like, no, I'm feeling really comfortable with, what I know, who I know, what my strategy is. There's just a few things I need to tweak or experiment around. Where are you at? It'd be great to know if you could pop something in the chat box. Or please feel free to unmute yourself. That would be great. And welcome those that have joined late. So where are you, and where do you want to be? Are there gaps? Any gaps in your mind? What are your reactions? Or just general reactions to what we've just shared? Any questions? Out of 5, you can give me a virtual hand or a physical hand. How biggest challenge is time? Yes. Would you like to share, Alexandra, how time affects you?
well, it doesn't expand like people do with everything that's been popping up. So keeping up with everything and using everything seems a little bit challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I've been talking to a team this week about time and how when we have too much time, it can of course work against us a little bit, because we do take time to do complex things, particularly if we've not done something before. It might feel that we're never necessarily ready, like doing business in a new market. And so it's thinking about what's the MVP, what's the smallest thing we can do to get out and test. But I think a really great way, and also just picking up on Michaela's point there of cultural differences, and specifics to different local markets. Instead of knowing yourself, it's a matter of who can you start to include in your network. Is there a community of people who care about what you're trying to do, who can provide you key insights? And so we live in this wonderful connected world, and just really interesting. One of the key concepts that the world's fastest growing companies do is build communities. They engage people, open source. If there's a problem, open innovation. How do you get people to have a say in what you're doing? And sometimes even there's a company in Melbourne that produced a photocopier software program that significantly reduced waste. I don't know the specifics of how it worked, but universities in Europe wanted it. But this small startup in Melbourne said, we can't afford to expand into Europe. We can't afford all the language translation. And one of the universities that wanted this software said, oh no, we'll do that for you. And so they expanded in Europe through this open source approach. They paid not 1 cent for translation. And so, we've got to also think about what are different ways, what's the hurdle that might be in our mind, or what's the hurdle that might have held us back or cost a lot of money in the past. So I'd love, Cornelio, you've said the big gap is not knowing or understand the new market. Would love to hear from you if you're happy to. And then Mihai, you as well. Oh, are you on mute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm now looking at an HR tech who has a proven business model and a proven product and monthly recurring revenue of more than 20,000 euro per month. And we are looking to new markets. And I think this issue of not knowing or understanding a new market, it's a big problem that computes on top of the financial resources to do that. Because if you look to, let's say, an HR tech type of business, it's much beyond the, let's say, the technical issues like the law legislation. It's about how people do business in different countries. What are the customs of building communities and so on. I think we speak about communities, but to build up a community, it's not something you do with a couple of meetings to an AmCham open day or something similar.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And we could spend a whole day talking about this. Well, let's just spend a minute. So when we do community building, at the heart of it is what's the purpose? And so we anchor the community in what's the purpose? What do they want to see in the world? What do they care about? What keeps them awake at 3 o'clock in the morning? Or what do they get up in the morning that they really care about? And then they will indeed, if you find those people, you don't always find them in a market. Sometimes they're a very small percentage of the world population. It really, of course, depends on what the problem or the purpose is that you're focusing on. There's a lady in India who has a wonderful business. She sources baby slings she gets the designs done by artisanal designers in India, in rural India. And the advice to her was, you have to sell these in India. Because of course, when you're a small business and you want some grants or some assistance and so on. And she said, no, culturally, we don't use them. It just didn't feel right for her. The advice that she was getting from the experts to her felt off. And I think it's a really important point. So she went against it. And she said, you know what I can do? I can get a website built. And I can also start to sell these to the wealthier markets in North America, Europe and Australia, Japan. And that's what she did. And what happened was there was storytelling, there was narrative around keeping your baby safe, using these natural products and so on, these natural fibers, and a community was built. And these women around the world started having their own, meetups and so on. And so absolutely, it's not about having a couple of meetings. I'm not a big fan of the institutional communities and tapping into them. I think it might be interesting to look at other creative ways, but that's something we could talk about for a full day, indeed. Wonderful, thank you for, yes, Duolingo, yeah, amazing, yeah, fantastic. And so indeed, the world's fastest growing companies, how are they using community? Lego is another great example. Lego have done some great stuff, and there are many examples. And just opening up the chat box again. Mihai, would you like to share your about your comments there?
Yeah, sure, Sophie. Thanks a lot for this great masterclass. So probably my use case is different because I work for a large company already. I work for HubSpot, and the company is not really looking to expand globally. They're already at a global presence. But I work for a smaller region. I work for CEE, Central Eastern Europe. And I totally agree with Cornelius' point that it's very, very difficult to expand to a new market if you don't have the local knowledge, cultural knowledge. Like you can find a lot of stuff online, but still, like you have to be there. In a way, you must hear from someone who had experience how it actually goes. Still, I believe that investing in online presence is very, very important. Of course, it depends on the industry that you're in. But yeah, I'm wondering if you can share some thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. So what, at a very high level, just in the interest of time, at a very high level, what we do, for example, in a corporate innovation sprint, if we're looking at, so within a 10 to 12 week timeframe, if we're looking at launching a new product or service in a new market, or just, we tend to create an offering at a global level. And how we go about that is if we are looking at, for example, a recent one was in pet care. So it's, people that are, where are people that have high disposable income or that they spend on their pets? And so we target, it's based on where does the market exist? Therefore the MVP may not be in other languages. If it's healthcare related and highly regulated, then we might be more targeted geographically, but essentially it's getting something out into the world, and to get that out into the world and to test it, we would engage people who know the market well. Okay, and so that might be, so for example, it could be, well, there's a concentration of that market in the US, but also in Japan. So let's have some consultation. Let's just use gig workers, experts, knowledge experts, find them on Upwork, find them on Fiverr, get their advice. But we want this quick approach to how we're going to build our capability, or even just outsource an MVP to be developed, so that we're building something really quickly and we want to test it really quickly. And it's all about gathering those insights so that at the end of the 10 or 12 weeks, we can say, actually, this is the learning curve that we went on, and now this is the thing that we've had, we've validated the business model that we're wanting to move forward with. And so there's also this fabulous app for physical, if you're wanting to know what a physical market looks like. GigWalk, is anyone familiar with GigWalk? And so it's available in 30 odd markets. Again, it's gig economy based. It's an app. You say, for example, I want to have, I'm a wine producer in Australia. Please go look at supermarkets in Japan. So a job is sent to the Japan app that says, I'm going to pay you $50 to go take 100 photos of supermarkets around Tokyo. And then I get that delivered to me. I don't need to go to Tokyo, and I can get it done in the 30 odd markets where they're based. And so technology is also allowing us to travel the world and remove the friction to understanding the world. And of course, just having great old fashioned conversations. So the technology is what I think of these amazing technologies that are scaling and taking us to different parts of the world. I see them as superhighways where we get to travel faster. And we can either, thank you, no, it's a walk, I've gone blank, Elena, let me feel. I will, when Mihaela is talking, I'll grab it. So these technologies allow us to travel further, faster. And we as companies, as digital or tech companies, our technology, our solutions can be superhighways. Or we can use the superhighways, of course, to get where we want to go and do what we want to do faster and easier. So I think it's when we talk about expanding our worldview, it's also what technology is coming online. Is it going to help us? Is it going to hinder us? Is it going to enable us to go get out faster, easier, cheaper, more impactfully? Okay, so there's a lot being spent on disrupting industries. And so a really good thing to do is to build in your network. If you get a sense that there's increasing competition coming from other parts in the world, if your next competitors are, so I'm in the Philippines, and let me tell you, the innovation here is impressive. Completely underestimated around the world. And so they have high disruptive capability because it's just not on the radars, certainly not on the radar of my country. And so it's looking at, and I know in Bangalore, all the main tech companies have their R&D capability. Where innovation comes from in the world is changing, where our competition comes from. And that appetite to scale quickly has really strong disruptive capability. Will it disrupt you? Or can you see it ahead of time and potentially partner or potentially incorporate it into your plans? So when we talk about a global strategy, it's not only where are you going and what do you want to do, but it's also what's the competition doing and how are they going to help or hinder you get where you want to go. Competitors, or just what are other businesses in general doing? And innovative business models tend to be designed around this scale, this acceleration. Because I'd love to know, feel free to unmute yourself or in the chat box, how many global players are there in your industry or your sector? Now, Elena, you mentioned your space is fairly crowded. And so does it tend to be a small number of globally dominant players? Because it tends to be that way in the tech or the digital tech space. Is that what you're seeing across the board here?
So I'll break the ice again. I think in our space, in the space of digital marketing agencies, of course, there's a trend of there are a few big agencies, but I think there are a lot of mid-sized agencies that are, just in between. So I wouldn't necessarily see like a marketing, one or two marketing giants, but rather many mid-sized players, a lot of course, smaller ones. And of course, you have the giants as well, but I wouldn't say it's comparable to tech.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And Cornelio he's opened up a question for the floor. Would anyone like to talk to that? Is it a red ocean? Who can give examples of blue oceans? Who can give us some examples? Cornelio, what's coming up for you?
I'm looking at blue ocean, Sophie. I'm not able to give an example of it.
Okay. Okay, great. Maybe we can have a discussion about that offline. We are quite, I think it's been a wonderful engaged, high engagement session, and we can carry on for another moment or two, but I'd just like to check in with Michaela, because I know that you want to do some follow-up as well.
Yes, but before this, I would give you a very nice example of collaboration, or let's not call it ocean, but at least a sea that I can already see in our industry. I see huge sharing of knowledge, including on LinkedIn, regarding B2B marketing and inbound marketing and B2B strategies from various agencies. And I just attended last week a 3 days event with different agencies, normally competition, rolling one after other with extremely interesting information for anyone that would like to participate. So I think this is the way to look into the world. I really enjoyed it because I'm new in this industry, doing digital marketing and trying to understand the needs of the clients. But I think we all have our own value proposition that is unique, and it will go through the world to the ones that really want to connect and match with us. So yeah, we can discuss more about this, but yeah. And about follow-up, yes, we'll have some follow-up afterwards. The masterclass will also send a recording to everyone who is interested in. We thought that at least some steps about how to prepare to engage for the companies when going global, with concrete steps to prepare for a website and for inbound strategy would be helpful for them as a start. And of course, we are open to exchange ideas and to bring more people and grow communities around what we believe in. Sustainable, healthy growth with the client in mind. This is the key for really great marketing strategies. Thank you, Sophie. If you want to have like final ideas, final remarks, or
yeah, wonderful
questions, we can.
Thank you. Andre had his hand up ever so quickly. It went up and it went down very quickly. So let's welcome him.
Yeah, I wanted to add to like Cornelio. Sorry to like not be in sync with the rhythm. But I feel like it's like a lot of people are talking about like there are different frameworks, and people are talking about like red ocean, blue oceans. I started to read a lot about category design lately, and thinking about like how you can actually build your own category and position yourself like differently. And we also discovered with clients, it's really important to understand what your clients actually need. I feel like asking the right questions, empathy, addressing the subject in the right, like the words that they're actually using, because like technical companies, for example, they tend to say like, we do cloud services, ABN, blah, something. And it's like your client is not talking about that. They're actually like, they actually just need to host their website. And that's the problem they have. So a lot of times I think we always try to start by like asking the right questions and figuring out exactly what the client needs. And it differs on, it's different based on like market and the culture maybe, and how they actually ask the questions and stuff like that. And then I think a lot about like, and what we do with the agency as well. A really important mode is building content and talking about these subjects, and talking about their experience. And it's a strong mode, I think, because it's so hard to do it. A lot of people like have the knowledge, and we talk a lot of clients, and they know really well their industry, they know about their services or products, but they don't just don't talk about it, and they don't write about it. And the clients wouldn't know how much they actually know about the subject, because there's no content out there built by them. So I think like that's a really important mode. And if you look like people, you feel like there are so many podcasts out there or like webinars and stuff. There are some, but if you look at how big the market is and how many there could be, there's like just under 1% of actually like companies actually creating a podcast or writing decent content on their topics and things like that. So I think like that's where I would look at. I would look at like making sure you understand the needs of your customer and how they refer to those needs, and then try to build content. What just try to put it out there and write it down, talk about it. So that's what I would say on this subject. So thanks for letting me share.
Wonderful. Oh, a round of applause for the insights from Andre. You need to run your own masterclass. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Asking great questions is, I mean, if we're going to take anything out into the market, we really want to have spoken to a lot of people, don't we? And there are ways we can expedite and accelerate that using technology. But starting somewhere, starting with a conversation with someone who really knows the market, has done something in the industry or in an adjacent industry is super valuable. And yeah, absolutely. The point about content is, so there is, I'll share it with Mihaela. During the pandemic, I wrote a very short ebook on doing business in the world without travel, because I was stuck at home for 2 years. There was no travel. But one of the points I make in the book, it's very short, it's about 30 pages, is where is your market looking? Where is your market? Where do they go to read? Where do they go to get insights? Where do they go for knowledge? And absolutely, there are ways to start positioning yourself as being the leader. And that's a really important way of starting to build a community, is finding the people who your message resonates with and that want to engage with you. And so, Andre, amazing points that you've just raised there. Thank you so much. Well, that is all from me. So I would like to say a huge thanks to Stoika for having me. And thank you to you all for having me come to you from steamy Manila. And yeah, wonderful to see you all this afternoon. And thanks so much for the interactive engagement.